We now invite Nandini Oberoi and Sanjeeb Kakoty onto the stage to begin the next session, Monpas by Vinay Sheel Oberoi. The book captures the lives of the Monpa people, a nomadic tribe living in the Tawang and West Kameng regions of Arunachal Pradesh.
I was here in the morning doing exactly what I'm doing now for a colleague and friend, Sanjay Mukherjee, who released his book. And as I was going out, I was told that there's another book that's going to be released on the Monpas. And whether it would be possible for me to come in and be a part of the conversation. I was more than happy to do it for two reasons. One is I myself have authored a book on Tawang, and that's a number of years ago. And the second is the author Vinay Sheel Oberoi, an IS officer of the Assam Meghalaya cadre, was personally known to me. He was senior to me, and but whenever I bumped in, we would always have a nice conversation. And I knew that the book, a labor of his love, of his years in the Northeast, was brought out posthumously. He passed away before the book actually came out in print. And I knew that the family, his wife Nandini was instrumental, his two daughters were instrumental in ensuring that the book comes out the way it has come out. And let me tell you that it has come out as a beautiful, beautiful piece of art, I would say. So we all know that by size, Arunachal is the largest land area in terms of size of all the states in the Northeast, but it's the most scantily populated. You may go for kilometers on end, for hours on end, and you may not meet another human being. That is Arunachal. And I'm particularly happy that his wife Nandini is here with us. This book was formally released in the Jaipur Literary Festival, so we are not really having a release function. But we will certainly talk about the book, we'll talk about Vinay Sheel, we will talk about the Monpas, and we'll talk about a lot of other things. But before we do that, I guess there is a short little film that we see prior to us getting into the conversation. Could I ask the organizers to kindly play the The film certainly took me back to Tawang. I was there maybe writing my book some 22 years ago, and that's a long time. The Monpas are a very, very different tribe. They are Buddhist. Unlike other tribes of Arunachal, they have a written script which is akin to the Tibetan script. And they actually were the southern part of the Tibetan kingdom, and they used to pay taxes to the kingdom of Tibet. And it's an amazing place. But before I get more into the place and to the people, I would like everybody, including myself, to know a little bit more about the author Vineshil Oberoi, because he was a person, as you saw in the last photograph, he was a person who was full of life. He had a smile that lit up his face, and no matter under how much stress he was, one thing that set him apart was his smile. So I'd like to know more from Nandini as to the person who made this book possible.
Good afternoon, and it's a little difficult to speak about my husband, but I will try to sort of give you all an idea of this book and the many things that he did. And it gives me great pleasure to be able to not release the book, but even discuss the book in Shillong, because Shillong was a very special place for us. For me, because I grew up here, because I actually went to St. Mary's College, where I think many of you might also be studying or have been to. And then sort of returned to Shillong after I married Vinay, and his cadre was Assam and Meghalaya, and so we came back here. So Shillong is very special for all of us, and that is why I think this particular event is so meaningful. A little about the book and how it came about. It wasn't, like many things, wasn't a plan to be a book. It was not that he set out to write this book, but he was very fond of taking photographs, and camera was very much part of his sort of, what he wanted to do or he liked to do. So even with a very basic small camera, he was always taking photographs. And over time, he ended up with more than like 25,000 photographs. At one point, then these photographs culminated in an exhibition at the IIC in Delhi, an exhibition on the Northeast, and they were having this exhibition. They asked him to put up his photographs, which he did, and then then the idea of the book sort of came from that, because then he found, after collating all his photographs taken over several years and several visits, many visits to Tawang and Arunachal. The photographs are not only of Tawang, there are many more photographs, and so there were plans for many other books that didn't really happen yet, but yeah, so that was.
The Vinay I knew was an administrator. He was somebody who was instrumental in setting up national institutes in the Northeast. He was behind the IIM Shillong. I can see some of our students sitting here, so I thought they should be informed. He was very much instrumental in setting up of the NIFT. And then as I kept on meeting him at different occasions, I noticed that the man was changing. And this change particularly was apparent after his stint as the Indian ambassador to the UNESCO in Paris, where he stayed for 4 years. He became an altogether different person. He became much more receptive. He had mellowed down. So I would really like to ask Nandini about the change in his persona post his stint and UNESCO as the Indian ambassador.
sure whether he changed as a person, but you know, your perspective does change as experience also changes all of us. And similarly, once we did go to Paris, you sort of understood, for example, heritage, culture in a slightly different way. Of course, you already live it. You're in a living culture. For example, the Monpas are a, you know, living culture every day. You're doing it every day, same way as Kong Bibi was saying in the morning. You know, the Khasi culture is the way you live, the way you do things. But when you go from that particular place, you leave it and you go somewhere else, you're looking at that same thing with a different viewpoint. So I think that his perspective, or the way you looked at the Northeast and the many cultures that are so vibrant in the Northeast, and he was very much a proponent of the intangible cultural heritage, which is a very big, you know, sort of, what should I say, it's, you know, it's not just, a heritage is not only in monuments and buildings and things like that. There's also a whole heritage. For example, when we were there, it hasn't yet got nominated, but he wanted to do, for example, the Kantha stitching textile tradition as an intangible cultural heritage. Now that has become, of course, last year, you know, the Durga Puja in Calcutta was nominated in that. So similarly, there's so many items like that, and so many things in every community and every part of the country. And so we became, in a way, I would say, more conscious of these sort of cultures, or seeing them differently. Of course, they were always there, and regardless of their nomination, they continue to thrive. But definitely that did help us to understand them.
I'm happy that you brought about the word intangible. So the intangible culture of the Northeast. Northeast, for those who are not initiated, and I'm afraid that even for the people who are from the Northeast, they have very little idea about the entire Northeast. They think Shillong is Northeast or Meghalaya is Northeast. There are close to 500 languages and dialects that are spoken in this tiny piece of land. And that's by far one of the largest number of languages spoken anywhere in the world. The Leash community, for instance, in Arunachal, number less than 100. And there are tribes that have 30, 40 individuals left. So in other words, they are on their way out. So the intangible cultural assets is something that we must all be very, very careful about. But there is also another thing which is going on simultaneously along with recognizing intangible cultural assets, is the concept of globalization, where we think that one size fits all. So what happens is the only culture that we are left with is the McDonald's culture. So with the onslaught of the globalized world order, how do you see the Northeast culture surviving, if at all?
Well, I hope it will survive, because, as I said, for me it's very special, but it's very also difficult to resist the McDonaldization of thing, you know. But it's nice to see, you know, local foods. There's also a big revivalist kind of tradition, which I saw in Shillong in the last visit also, and even now, you know, homegrown coffee, many teas, of course, always were there, but many other people trying to, you know, use, I would say, in a way, local ingredients to make. Just now we just saw, you know, Cherrapunji gin, for example. So many different things that are coming up. So yes, also culture also keeps on, you know, sort of reinventing itself, I would think, to be able to cater to the new demands. So there is that element as well, and there is a difficult choice that has to be made about resisting this globalization, as well as, you know, but now the new globalization is going local, so that's at least a good thing.
So it's going back to Tawang. What happens is the Monpas are probably one of the most cultured tribes in the Northeast because of their very, very long tradition of Buddhism. The monastery in Tawang is one of the oldest and largest monasteries in Asia, and it is a sight to behold. Now, there is a tradition amongst the Monpas that one child from each family has to be given away to the monastery to become a monk. And that's why they don't run out of novitiates who will ultimately become monks. Now, I was very, very intrigued as to how could anybody give away a precious son or a precious child to go and become a monk. So I went into the villages and talked to people while writing my book, interviewed them. And one of the things was that people actually felt very, very proud that they are able to contribute to the monastery through a child. So it was not something that they felt bad about, but it was a moment of pride for them. The other thing that I noticed was that you reach Tawang after crossing one of the highest passes in the eastern Himalayas, the Sela Pass. There's a lake there, which most of the time it's frozen. And when you reach Tawang, you find out that probably for about 6 months of the year, it would be under very adverse weather conditions, snow and hailstones and stuff like that. And the other time would be relatively warmer, but for us it was still cold. And but the people had adopted techniques that enable them to live in harmony with nature. So one of the things that I noticed the agriculturists doing was that they would have pits where they would make compost of leaves and other things. So composting was something that was ingrained into the culture. It was a culture of no waste. And the third was the design of their houses. Most of the houses had wooden roofs, and they were put together with the help of stones. And in the winter, when it snowed, the temperatures inside the house did not go down too much. Now, the concept of culture and the concept of tourism often seem to be at loggerheads, because what happens is every place seems to have a carrying capacity for the number of tourists that it can accommodate in a given time. Now, what is happening with the Northeast opening up and places far off places like Tawang being connected with both helicopters, and there is a tunnel under the Sela Pass which makes it easier for you to reach Tawang, which will mean that the number of people flocking into Tawang would be in their thousands. Now, would it be possible for that culture, which has been secluded by nature, would it be possible for the environment, which is so very fragile, to take this huge onslaught of people coming in to enjoy Tawang? I mean, yes, we want tourism, and this is a tourism festival as well. But I think as educated people, it would be very difficult for us to completely ignore the carrying capacity of a place, I would. And she is a teacher of economics. I think there's no better person than her.
Well, it's very difficult to answer this question because it's a fine balance. But I agree that, the carrying capacity is a concept that we should try to definitely sort of implement in some way. And you need to therefore, make provisions, whether it is one-way trafficking, because I just went last year to Missouri, and we could not cross from the academy to Landor for more than 2.5 hours. We finally had to just turn back and go back. So you don't want to do that to all your hill stations. We are getting close to it. So definitely it is something to consider. And with the Sela Pass no longer as formidable as it is, because earlier, every time you cross Sela Pass, you would be always a little tense about it, because it was, there's all this picture that you saw in the video of those many bends, hairpin bends, is really approaching Sela. And so yes, this is a question always, how much tourism is good enough. you know. And last time when we went to Tawang and near it, I saw there were 400 homestays listed. So, you know, there is, of course, there's, for the people who are running these homestays, there's some income and all that is, of course, there. But on the other hand, yes, if you have traffic jams, they're always, every year in the summer, in Delhi where I live, there'll always be a couple of videos that people would have made of the, you know, the traffic jam to Himachal or to some other place, and that you certainly don't want anywhere. So yes, that, I mean, I think we know the answer to this question, but whether we are ready to implement it and how we implement it is really something of governance, really. And of course, we also have right next to us Bhutan that does it in a very much measured way, you know. So there is also that example not very far from us. So definitely, I think it's a question.
Probably a festival like this would certainly have to consider this at some point of time, that the Northeast is only just opening up to tourism. So it is better that we put in place kind of strictures and rules that would enable us to reap the benefits of tourism by controlling it and ensuring that the flip side doesn't overtake us. But that's certainly a big challenge, and I'm not too sure how successful we'll be. We have got the example of Bhutan there. We have got the example of Bangkok. On the other hand, we have got the example of Kathmandu. And I'm not too sure whether Bangkok and Kathmandu, even though they attract a huge amount of international tourists, they are the best examples for us to follow.
Yes.
So that would be something.
I mean, I'm coming from Delhi, where the quality of air at the moment is enough to tell us what we should not do, you know, for anyone. So I think that's really something we don't want to go that way, that, you know, that retreating becomes so difficult afterwards. So I think, yes, you're absolutely right, that we need to be conscious of it, and we need to, somebody needs to be, before it becomes like that. So I think at the moment, I think you're all right here, but Tawang also, that's another question, because very fragile environments, all of these, and you know, you mentioned this leash community. Actually, in the book, some of the photographs and the weaving and all is all in the leash community village that I went to, in fact. So that was really, yeah.
So from culture, I would want to take you to another journey as you proceed towards Tawang. On the way, there is a shrine of a fallen Indian soldier. It's known as Jaswantgarh, and the person was Baba Jaswant. So he is supposed to have single-handedly met with the invading Chinese forces and stopped an entire platoon from advancing, and in the process lost his life. So there's a shrine there, and it is the duty of everyone to go and pay their respect to the shrine. Now, sentries on duty, they have this legend which says that if a sentry who's on duty in the border happens to fall asleep or is not doing his duty too well, he would get a tight slap on his face, and when he opens his eyes to see, there is no one. So they say it's Baba Jaswant who is looking after the border for us. Do you have any other anecdotes to share on Jaswantgarh?
Not so many anecdotes, but definitely I've seen the shrine and also been to Bumla, the pass, etc. Seen the Chinese on the other side. In the earlier days when it was still, you know, you could just see a little bit of action and we would be looking through binoculars, etc. But not too many other things. But I have enjoyed the pakoras and tea at every small, you know, little camp along the way. Yeah, definitely.
So the only place you can walk in are the army camps that are there. There'd be no shops, there'd be no restaurants like you know. So you go into an army camp and they would be very happy to serve you with some hot tea and some pakoras. And we essentially survived on those during our stay in Tawang because we were traveling all over the place. And it's a fascinating account. Now, photographs speak 1,000 words, they say. One photograph speaks 1,000 words. And as I was glimpsing through some of the photographs, you could take it as a journey through time. There's so much changing. And this journey is fascinating that it has been captured in a book and put it out for us to enjoy. Now, is it possible that Vinay must have had photographs of other places of the Northeast? Because when you're an administrator, you have the access to areas that civilians don't have to. So there could be photographs, there could be notings of the region, which I think it would be a shame to just lie somewhere in a trunk that is hardly opened. So are you planning on coming out with some of the books?
Well, there are lots of photographs of other parts of Arunachal as well, and there was in his mind a book on the Siang, which was another river which was very close to his heart, and he was fascinated by the Brahmaputra, as anybody in the Northeast always is. So was him, Muli, and he has done also a couple of talks on the origin of the Brahmaputra and the Pandit brothers, and the early explorations of the Brahmaputra river, etc. So there are some of those photographs, and let's see if we can, because it's not very easy to sort of come up with a book. This book, to be honest, though, we did bring it out later, but he had done all the work for it very much, before he passed away. So we only were really doing minor editing and things of that kind. So yes, I do hope that, let's see if we can. There are certain photographs of other parts of the Northeast as well, including very nice photographs of the Bedan Klum, actually, which we went with Bijon the first time.
Vinay's two daughters, Naira and Nayantara. Naira is here. She's done her master's in public policy. Nayantara is doing her PhD in Paris in France. And since she's somebody who's done her master's in public policy, so one thing that has been arresting my attention for a very long time is the diversion of the Brahmaputra and the Siang at the territory occupied by China. And there are no international rules that prevents the upper riparian state from using and diverting the water of a river. And this would actually take away the rights of the people of India and Bangladesh away from the river, which is its lifeline. So as a matter of public policy, with the photographs and the notings that Vinay might have left you, you may come up with another book that may add to our arsenal to say that we have a right over the Brahmaputra. That's just by way of suggestion.
Thank you. I mean, I hope, let's see, I don't know if there are no notings as such, but we will try to see. And since you bring this up, the last year we'd gone to the Siang, and the water was actually quite different from the color of the water, and they said that they were not sure, but they said that maybe something is happening on the China side, so I don't know. But it is definitely an interesting sort of idea to look into it.
The only problem is that we are running out of time. The Three Gorges Dam are already there. The other dams that are coming up, so unless something scholarly comes up from the Northeast specifically, we might just be in for a bit of a trouble there. But anyway, going away from that, they say that people who see the region from a different perspective are the ones who actually have a lot to talk about. If you look at the world history, Hitler was not really a German. He was born in Austria. Napoleon was not a Frenchman. He was born in the island of Corsica. Now, you might not have been born here, but you've lived a good part of your life, and I'd say a best part of your life, doing your graduation in Shillong. So you have known Shillong then, and you're seeing Shillong now. What has changed?
or too much, I would say. But, you know, it's also nice to see the change that has come. You know, in our time, the big thing was to go to Delhi Mishtan Bhandara and eat jalebis and dosa. That was the big outing. So there was nothing else. So now it's very nice to see all these, you know, nice restaurants and excellent food. And, you know, so all of that is very nice. The traffic isn't so very nice, but again, you know, that I've already talked about that. So I think a little bit of management in that, and you're from IIM, so maybe that's what you've got to do. You get your students to do a little survey and, you know, quickly start putting some ideas out as to how to manage that better. But otherwise, yes, I mean, you know, development, as we all know, you can't stop it, and we can't also just live in a museum in the I mean, it's a strange thing, but I'm actually coming back to Shillong again after 50 years. Come several times in the middle, but the first time that I came, it was in 1973 when I had just finished my ISc. So it's strangely, as we were coming up last evening, I was thinking it's 50 years. So I have really seen Shillong change in half a century. I mean, I feel like an old grandmother, but that's how it is. But yes, there's been a lot of change. But you know, these cherry blossom trees certainly weren't there in those early years. So this is very nice, and the cherry blossom festival also. So you know, I think those are all positive things that have happened.
That's amazing. Actually, we were working on something on traffic, and the best solution that we could find is Shillong could become the first city that just walks. It is possible for people. When we were kids, we walked to school. When our campus was in Longthamai, I used to walk on an average, I used to walk for 12 kilometers a day, and I got everything done walking. So I think it's still possible for Shillong to become the city that walks. And this is a suggestion, if the organizers are listening, that by the next Cherry Blossom Festival, we say that we have started the initiative where we walk. I am very mindful of the time. So we have come to the end of the allotted time for us. It was fascinating talking to you. And it's almost like I'm meeting my old friend once again. I'll be meeting him through his book. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you.